The idea behind the hub is to make more information about crime in South Africa more available to the public and to researchers, people in academia, to civil society and even policymakers. There's a lot of information out there, especially on crime stats for each of the 1,114 police precincts. There are about detailed statistics for about 30 different kinds of crimes. So murder to common assault to house robberies or house burglaries, car theft. But the problem is that a lot of that information is difficult to find. It's not an easy to use format. So what we've really done over the last year is we've put all these data sets together and then developed this mapping technology using Google Maps, for instance, so that you can get onto the hub and immediately start seeing what is a certain crime rate like in your area compared to surrounding precincts or other parts of the country, or for the whole, or how is crime distributed throughout Gauteng, for instance. And how did that change over the last 7 years? So we have data going back to 2002, 2003. And the idea really is so that anybody who wants to know about the crime in a specific kind of crime in the area where they live and work can very quickly find that just by getting onto the website, a couple of clicks, and then they'll have that information. And the idea is to help, say, community groups such as community police forums, neighborhood watches, look at which crimes are going up and which crimes are going down. So they can do, of course, the crime stats, the officially released crime stats, are usually a year out of date to 18 months out of date. So it won't be the most recent information. That you still have to go to your police station and get information through your CPF, Community Policing Forum. But if you really want to get an overall sense of how crime has changed in the last 5 to 7 years in your area, you can get onto the hub. But more than that, it also gives information a lot about other kinds of dynamics that are associated to crime. So what we can start doing is looking at the raw statistics by the numbers of people living in an area, because it might look like there's a very high crime rate, for instance, in Sandton for house robberies, but there are a lot of houses in Sandton. So that doesn't give you an accurate assessment of your likelihood or the rate of people being victimized. So for other ways we can start doing that is looking at the estimate census data for 2010 that will be updated next year's census, but it starts telling us how many people are living there and what are the rates of crime for that area. So then you'll see the pattern changes quite dramatically. And that gives you a better sense of the extent to which people are being victimized in a certain area. And of course, a lot of practical hints how to avoid being a victim of crime. There's a lot of information about how the criminal justice system works. So everything from the budgets, the structure, the personnel, the future plans and mandates of the police, the Department of Justice, the Department of Correctional Services, and how that's changed over the last few years. We're also looking at the performance indicators. So how many arrests do the police make for any specific number of categories of crime and how that's changed if you look at that in terms of their budgets and their personnel. So what we really want to do is allow more people in South Africa more information about the crime situation, how it's changing, easy to use maps, but then also about the function of the criminal justice system, and then helpful practical tips on how to engage with the criminal justice system. If you want to go to lay a complaint, what are your rights? If you want to visit somebody in prison, or if you're court to court, what can you expect? Also, if you want to relay a complaint, if you want to recognize someone who's done a good thing for you, you can do the same thing. So really it's about trying to get people more engaged, and we're doing that through information. And also allowing academic researchers and policy developers a lot more detail so they can start looking at the kinds of, are their policies working in certain areas or not. So that's the whole idea behind the hub. Interestingly enough, the idea of such a capacity was first formulated over 10 years ago. I think in 1998, it's the first time I heard of something called the Crime and Justice Monitor. And what has really been the challenge is a lot of the time at that point the data coming out of the criminal justice system wasn't very reliable, or it kept on changing each year. They'd add new data sets, change the names of the columns. It's only really been in the last 5 or 7 years that we've seen a lot more consistent data coming out, and the technology's improved. So even a few years ago, when the initial early attempts were taken, it took too long to put the stuff on a map, and then the capacity your computer would need to get a map downloaded quickly would be too much for most ordinary laptops and micro word processors. So really what's happening, it's been a combination of better information being available more regularly, and better technology, and better broadband, for instance. So I think really what's just kind of happened is that this, those two sets, the available data and the technology has come together so that we can actually do this now. But it really has been a need, because certainly people have found it very difficult, and you think about if you immediately wanted to know what the crime rate in your area was compared to the surrounding areas, how would you do that? You can't actually do that at the moment. You would have to go through quite a laborious process of getting onto the police website, then downloading your specific crime stats for your precinct. You'd have to then look up all the other precincts, and that's a lot of time. You're clicking between different websites, waiting for PDF files to download. If you wanted to do that historically, in other words, how crime changed in the last 5 years, you'd have to go to all the previous PDF files. So literally it can take you half an hour to an hour just to find out a simple question about how does murder or robbery in my area compare to 2 other precincts nearby? Now you can do that within seconds. Within a minute, you can zoom in and out and see how crime is changing in your area. So that's just really how the technology has developed and allowed us to do this. It's available from today. It's the best way to access it is through the Institute for Security Studies website. But you could also go into www.crimejusticehub.co.za. That'll take you to the homepage.